Order. Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr. will lead the chamber in prayer.
Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you this new day. We come before you today as we open this Senate session. We humble ourselves and ask your forgiveness so that we all stand worthy and right before your eyes. We want to thank you, Lord, for taking care of each one of us, including our families, for keeping safe and healthy. Thank you always, Lord, for your divine protection, even from infection. We ask now for your guidance upon all who are here, that we may hear your voice each day directing our steps. We ask for wisdom that comes from above, that is first of all pure, peace-loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. It is full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. We do embrace what Micah 6, verse 8 declares. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. Dear Lord, may there always be unity and respect among us, and to consider always the welfare of our people, our nation. May the spirit of understanding, love, and peace always be upon us. Give us all your abundant grace to see the good in each one, to treasure and value relationships. We uphold to you also our president and our country. You said in Psalm 32, verse 12, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." Today, we receive your blessing and declare with our mouth that we, your people, dwell safely in this land, and you will cause each one to prosper as we hold ourselves accountable to you. Thank you, Lord, for your faithfulness and that you hold our nation in the palm of your mighty hands. This is our prayer in the most precious name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And all say, Amen.
Thank you. The secretary will please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara,
Present.
Binay,
Present.
Cayetano,
Present.
De Lima, De La Rosa,
Present.
Drilon,
Present.
Gatchalian, Go,
Present.
Gordon,
Present.
Ontiveros, Lacson, Lapid,
Present.
Marcos,
Present.
Pacquiao,
Present.
Pangilinan,
Present.
Pimentel III, Poe,
Present.
Recto,
Present.
Revilla Jr.,
Present.
Tolentino, Villanueva, Villar,
Present.
Zubiri.
Present.
Senate President Soto III is present.
With 7 senators physically present and 15 senators virtually present, for a total of 22, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 39th Session, Tuesday, January 26, 2021, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection? Chair hears none. The journal is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will proceed with the reference of business.
Reference of business resolution, PS Resolution number 626, entitled Resolution Expressing the Profound Sympathy and Sincere Condolences of the Senate of the Philippines on the death of Gawad sa Manlilikha ng Bayan awardee Yabing Masalon Dulo, introduced by Senator Binay.
To the Committee on Rules.
Communications, letter from the Executive Secretary of the Office of the President transmitting to the Senate a certified true copy of Financial or Technical Assistance Agreement number 07-2020-I-OMR, executed by and between the Republic of the Philippines as represented by the signatory on behalf of the President and Iron Ore, Gold and Vanadium Resources Philippines Inc. on 25 November 2020 in compliance with Chapter 6, Section 36 of Republic Act number 7942 or the Philippine Mining Act of 1995.
To the Committee on Environment.
Letters from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas transmitting to the Senate copies of the following certified and authenticated BSP issuances in compliance with Section 15A of Republic Act number 7653, the new Central Bank Act, circular numbers 1103, 1104, 1105, 1106, and 1107 dated 26-27 November 2020, 2 and 23 December 2020, circular letter number CL 2020-054, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, dated 6, 16, 26 November 2020, 2, 3, 14, 15 December 2020, CL-2021-001, 002, 3, 4, and 5, dated 6 and 8 January 2021, and memorandum numbers M-2020 80, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, dated 9 October, 11, 23 November 2020, 1, 3, 2, 9, 11, 12, 15, 16, 18, 21, 28 December 2020, M-2021-01, 2, and 3, dated 4 and 8 January 2021.
To the Committee on Banks. There is additional reference.
Additional reference of business messages from the House of Representatives, letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 26 January 2021, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 8202, an act mandating the proper installation and maintenance of overhead electric distribution, communication lines, and structures by all electric distribution, cable, and telecommunications companies for purposes of public safety and good housekeeping.
To the Committee on Public Services and the Committee on Urban Planning.
And House number 8249, an act declaring the first day of February of every year as National Hijab Day and promoting an understanding of the Muslim tradition of wearing a hijab.
To the Committee on Cultural Communities.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 26 January 2021, it designated Representatives Macapagal Arroyo, De Jesus, Vergara, and Dagook as its conference to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of House number 8145, entitled An Act Extending the Implementation of the Lifeline Rate, amending for the purpose Section 73 of Republic Act number 9136 as amended, otherwise known as the Electric Power Industry Reform Act of 2001, and Senate number 1877, entitled An Act Extending and Enhancing the Implementation of the Lifeline Rate, amending for the purpose Section 73 of Republic Act number 9136, otherwise known as the Electric Power Industry Reform Act of 2001 as amended by Republic Act number 10150.
To the Committee on Rules.
Bill on first reading, Senate number 2025, an act amending Section 13, Article 16 of Republic Act number 11054, entitled An Act Providing for the Organic Law for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, repealing for the purpose Republic Act number 6734, entitled An Act Providing for an Organic Act for the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, as amended by Republic Act number 9054, entitled An Act to Strengthen and Expand the Organic Act for the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, introduced by Senator Gordon.
To the Committee on Local Government. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before we take up official matters, I would just like to put on record, I had a wonderful meeting this afternoon with the gentlemen and ladies of the Philippine Air Force, headed by Major General Florante Amano, who's with us today, Mr. President. And the staff, Colonel Enor, Colonel Inakay, Colonel Arcog, Colonel Omar, and Colonel Sufrencia with us, and Major Salwado, to discuss how we can help, Mr. President, how the Senate can help them with their AFP modernization program. It was taken up earlier today, Mr. President, that indeed the UH 1D and UH1 H are older than me, Mr. President. I am 51 years old, and apparently they are the range of 53, an average age of 53-year-old aircraft. And we all agreed that the wear and tear of this aircraft, Mr. President, should be already put to rest and decommissioned, and even the President has agreed to that. So I committed to them, Mr. President, that if in the budget in 2022, maybe we can support them with augmenting their budget to buy the Sikorsky. They have a wish list. Black Hawks. They already have 16 on its way here, Mr. President. Baka pwede natin madagdagan because the UWIs are plenty. There's about 25 that needs to be decommissioned. So we'll need to augment it, Mr. President. So we're thankful that they came over, they presented it to me, and tapos with the commitment of our finance chief, Senator Angara, and we have several former armed forces here. We have Senator Lacson and Senator Bato, as well as all the members who believe that our armed forces deserve the best, Mr. President. So we thank them for their service.
Don't forget the Sergeant at Arms is General in the Philippine Air Force.
That's right, Air Force, our Sergeant at Arms. Anong Army ba siya, sir, or Air Force?
Air Force.
Oh, Air Force. Yan pala.
Air Force.
Kabaro pala nila. So, UE pilot. Mas matanda sa atin, General, yung UE. So, yun lang po. I just wanted to put that on record. And they have a very good plan of action for the modernization of the armed forces.
Very good. Welcome to the Senate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr.
Yes.
President, Senator Risa Ontiveros would like to recognize.
Senator Antiveros recognized.
thank you, Mr. President. Just very briefly, may I again register my presence in today's session because I apologize. I was again late for the roll call.
All right, they will record that. It's,
Thank you,
appeared
Mr.
after the
President.
logo. Yeah, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, I move that we take up our official business. For today, we have interpellations of few measures. I was told, Mr. President, well, we have Senate Bill number 1947. I move that we resume consideration, Mr. President. This is the judicial marshals.
In my agenda, it says here privilege speech by Senator Benitez.
Yes, our dear colleague, Senator Coco, has requested, Mr. President, that he'll deliver it on Monday.
I see. All right.
My apologies.
So any objection to the motion that we take up Senate Bill 1947? Hearing none. Consideration is in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. To sponsor the measure is Senator Gordon. We'd like to request our colleagues, although the office of Senator, our Minority Floor Leader, distinguished Senator Drilon, had requested to interpolate on Monday, as well as Senator Kiko Pangilinan. Are there any other colleagues, Mr. President, who would like to interpolate a distinguished sponsor of the measure for today? Meron bang mag-interpolate kay Judicial Marshals? You want to ask a few questions? Yeah, may we request, may we recognize Mr. President, Senator Coco? Yeah, may I ask for 1 minute suspension so that Senator Coco can...
Session is suspended for 1 minute. Presume,
Thank you, Mr. President. May we recognize the sponsor, Senator Richard Gordon, and to interpolate our distinguished colleague from Cagayan de Oro, Senator Coco Pimentel.
yes, the sponsor is Senator Richard Gordon, and to interpolate, Senator Aquilino Pimentel III.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission, consent, and indulgence of the good sponsor, just a few, if I may ask, just a few clarificatory questions, because I think this is also a very new idea which we are proposing in this measure, Mr. President.
Willingly, Your Honor.
May I know from the good sponsor if we patterned this measure or our bill on any existing judiciary marshal set up in any other country, Mr. President?
Yes, Your Honor. Some of these were taken from the federal marshals of the United States, Mr. President.
So the United States of America has a federal marshal system, Mr. President, and may we know what is the role being performed by the said federal judicial marshals?
I mean, the U.S. Marshals. Well, they make arrests of people who are pending warrant of arrest or chase after fugitives. If you remember the fugitive Harrison Ford, oh no, not Harrison, was a doctor that was being chased by a federal marshal incessantly. And of course, they also handle prisoners, handle the court system as well. The orderliness of court procedure, when asked, they can come in and make the necessary activities that they need to do, Mr. President.
Mr.
It's
President,
part of the
did we-
executive branch of government, and it's within the U.S. Department of Justice, and essentially they protect the federal judiciary, meaning the federal judges. Like I said, they apprehend federal fugitives. In mga RICO cases, they manage and seize assets acquired by criminals through illegal activities. And of course, they take care of housing and transporting federal prisoners. They also operate the Witness Security Program and provide assistance in locating and apprehending the most violent fugitives, Mr. President.
But our proposed judiciary marshals here, Mr. President, will not be performing such a varied and wide scope of tasks, Mr. President.
Yes, they will. They're supposed to protect the judges, the justices, the Court of Appeals, and their families. When necessary, they also do, like the federal marshal, they also do intelligence work, threat analysis, and of course, they will also seize assets, go after escaped prisoners, and issue and warrants of arrest. And they can also, when told by the Supreme Court to investigate judges who are involved in corruption, they will do so, Your Honor.
So, Mr. President, maybe the tasks mentioned by the sponsor are found in Section 4, but there is also a Section 5 on jurisdiction. How different is Section 4 from Section 5? What is the purpose for having Section 5 on jurisdiction, Mr. President?
Let me just skim through it. Wala akong Section 5.
On
Just a moment,
page,
the paper I have is not complete, Your Honor. I'm asking my staff to provide me the complete document. Can you show me section 5, please? Minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended. Resume.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Senator Gordon.
Uh, Under section 5, Your Honor, the judiciary marshal shall have primary jurisdiction to undertake investigations of crimes and other offenses committed against justices, judges, court officials, and personnel, halls of justice, court houses, and other court properties, Mr. President. That's the primary jurisdiction of the federal of the judiciary marshals, apart from their duties outlined in section 4.
and when we say when we mention primary jurisdiction, does that mean that there is an agency which has secondary jurisdiction over the same subject matter?
Well, I would imagine the National Bureau of Investigation, other law enforcement agencies like the PNP, or such as the CIDG, they ought to be conducting investigations against assassinations or ambushes against our judges. But as you can see, the record is replete with so many judges having been, assassinated. Since 1999, there have been 434 judges that have been assassinated since 1995. And recently, you even had the retired justice killed in Tarlac. And then in November 11 of 2020, Judge Maria Abadilla was killed by her clerk of court. That should be well within the jurisdiction of the federal marshal as to the matter of carrying weapons inside the courtroom and making sure that they're able to assess the mental stability or the capacity of the people who are employed in the judges' chambers or in the judges' sala to see to it that the judges are protected.
So, yes, Mr. President. So, this is the legislature's reaction to the news and the fact that a lot of members of the judiciary have been victims of violent crimes or victims of violent acts. And I agree that we need to pay special attention to their situation because it's not easy to adjudicate on rights, rule on criminal cases, and people to jail. But my question, Mr. President, is if we look at the functions and powers and responsibilities, we have clearly gone beyond the objective of securing the members of the judiciary because there is even like, for example, paragraph D, to conduct investigations concerning allegations now of graft and corruption of the members committed by the members of the judiciary. So this is more than just protecting them, and maybe some of the members of the judiciary will complain that they are starting to be harassed by the judiciary marshals, Mr. President.
Well,
And
let me,
then they are to assist in the execution of writs and processes of courts, which are now currently done by sheriffs plus PNP if requested by the sheriff. So my question, Mr. President, is haven't we gone too far beyond the main purpose of the proposal, which is to secure the members of the judiciary against violent crimes or possible violent acts?
as I pointed out, this is not the only aim of this bill to secure the judges. It is really to protect the judiciary from intimidation, so that it will be brave enough to do what it is supposed to do, administer justice without fear or favor. The favor part is the investigation only upon direction by the Supreme Court that there are some corrupt judges that they would like to investigate. By the very nature of a marshal, it means that you marshal the power sufficient to make sure that judges are not only adequately protected, but the institution of the court is adequately protected. It doesn't become a toothless tiger. In the federal system, they confiscate the fruits of the crime, and here they're also allowed here to do so. But anytime a judge is killed, that reduces the courage, I think, of the judges, especially if they're in a far-flung area. There have been occasions when courts, the function of a particular judge has been transferred to another sala. Mr. President, Mr. President, I am hearing some voices out there. I don't know whether we can prevail upon some of our members to try and turn off their mute themselves so that we can have an intelligent conversation. Mr. President, as I pointed out, these are matters that really go not only to the person but also to the institution of the judiciary, Mr. President. And I don't see that we've gone far enough. I think it's gone far enough that many judges have been killed. It's gone far enough that many judges have been cowed, so much so that they inhibit themselves from certain cases. That the proceedings in the court have to be transferred, as you know, upon application to a different jurisdiction. And I think that our judges and our judiciary must be adequately able to make a statement that you don't mess with the judiciary, because that is the essence of the rule of law, that the magistrates can judge fairly and firmly and without fear or favor.
Mr. President,
Senator Lacson is recognized.
with the permission of the distinguished sponsor and Senator Pimentel, just a follow-up question on the issue of we're going beyond the normal functions, powers, and responsibilities. May I invite the attention of the distinguished sponsor to Section 4, Paragraph N, Mr. President, to make arrests without warrant for any offense committed in his or her presence, or for any felony cognizable under the laws of the Philippines, if he or she has reasonable grounds to believe that the person to be arrested has committed or is committing such felony. The question, Mr. President, is, are we amending Rule 113, Section 5 of the Rules of Court, Mr. President?
Well, Mr. President, any citizen can make a citizen's arrest. If a crime is being committed in front of you and you have the power to accost that criminal and stop the commission of the crime, or if any law enforcement officer feels that a crime is about to be committed, he has a duty to stop it. I think we're not changing anything. Certainly, when you empower judicial marshal or judiciary marshal to do these things, you're actually enhancing the capability of our law enforcement to be able to do so. If there are many assassinations happening in our country, and if there's a judicial marshal that happens to be there, I would imagine that they should be able to stop it, and they should have the power and the duty to stop it.
I have no problem with that, Mr. President. But we're changing probable cause because Section B or Paragraph B of Section 5, Rule 113, it states when an offense has just been committed and he has probable cause to believe, based on personal knowledge of facts and or circumstances, that the person to be arrested has committed it. Under Paragraph N, it seems that we are replacing probable cause with reasonable grounds to believe, Mr. President. So that's the reason why I asked the question, are we amending Section 5, Rule 113, Mr. President? Are we changing probable cause with reasonable grounds to believe, Mr. President? Because the threshold is different. Ewan ko, nagsasalita.
I'm sorry, I think that reasonable ground is valid for the judicial marshals because there are persons in authority, and it would be a tragedy if they cannot act when there is something being perpetrated. And the term reasonable is precisely that. They act with reason because it's part of their duty to enforce the law, albeit exclusively for on the surface for the judiciary. But obviously, I would not take that away from them. I don't think we're amending it. If we want to amend 113, we would have to go directly to 113. We're not. This is a part of the powers that we have provided for the judicial marshals. And by the way, this is done in consultation and with the support of the Supreme Court of the Philippines.
Precisely, Mr. President. That's the reason why I asked the question, are we amending Rule 113, Section 5, particularly Paragraph B?
No, we're not amending it. We're just giving a different treatment insofar as the judicial marshals are concerned. They have reasonable ground to suspect that the criminal is there, and I think we should allow them to arrest. What is the heartburn there? I mean,
so we're amending because reasonable grounds to believe is different from probable cause and personal knowledge. Because again, Paragraph B, and I would state again for the record, when an offense has just been committed and he has probable cause to believe based on personal knowledge, and it was stricken out under section or under Paragraph N.
No, we're not. We're simply, as I said, putting the citizens' arrest powers under the rules of court as an express power of the judiciary marshals. If you want to make it change the word reasonable to probable cause, I'm willing to accept that.
Yeah, that's my point, Mr. President. Anyway, it's amply covered under Paragraph K, Mr. President. And at the proper time, I will propose to just delete Paragraph N because it's already covered under Paragraph K, which says to make arrests, search and seizures in relation to the functions of the Office of the Judiciary Marshals and in accordance with the Constitution, existing laws, jurisprudence, and rules pertaining to Rule 113, Section 5, Mr. President. So at the proper time, I will propose to amend by deleting Paragraph N, Mr. President, with due respect to the distinguished sponsor.
Well, I respect the stance of the distinguished gentleman from Cavite. I just want to make sure that remember in K they are making arrests, search and seizures in relation to the functions of the office of the judiciary marshals in accordance with the Constitution, existing laws, jurisprudence, and rules. At the proper time, we can debate this, but of course, when you start looking at the matter of citizen arrest, we were just making it an express power of the judiciary marshals to be able so to do if it presents itself. I don't think it's important matter to some of us, but I think I want to make sure that the judicial. I don't think that there will be any excessive enforcement of this rule. In fact, the problem is there's very meager, uh, you know, uh, uh, enforcement of law in this country, and I think giving this to judiciary marshals would help our country's peace and order effort. They're not going
Thank
to
you, Mr. President.
we can talk about it later when you make the amendment.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you.
I'll resume
Yes,
my
please
interpellation.
continue, Senator Pimentel.
Yes, sir. Senator Lacson pointed out paragraph K, Mr. President. So it made me now wonder, why would the judiciary marshals be conducting search warrants, Mr. President?
Well, when there's a warrant of arrest for somebody that is within the jurisdiction of the court, obviously they will need a search warrant. If they're trying to enforce the orders of the Supreme Court with respect to an investigation of a judge, that's an added layer of cleaning up the judiciary. I asked the office of the court administrator about this, and they said it is necessary so that they can function even better.
So can, Mr. President, can the Chief Justice, can the court administrator, or can any member of the Supreme Court issue the search warrant for the judiciary marshals to implement?
They still have to make application, of course, to any judge or justices. But obviously, because the judicial marshals are under the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, I mean, they would know where to go in case of, for example, wiretapping. They have to go to the Court of Appeals in case they need to wiretap on some of the conversations of allegations of bribery. We all know that they have to go to the Court of Appeals to be able to get such a warrant.
Mr. President, right now, that we still do not have judiciary marshals, who are performing all of these tasks and investigative acts that we are talking about? For example, there's an allegation against a member of the judiciary for corruption, and the investigator feels the need to wiretap, as mentioned by the sponsor. Who is doing these things as of the moment, Mr. President?
Well, law enforcement, NBI, police, CIDG, they can all do that. In the first place, for an example, I can think of an overlap of functions within the ombudsman who may investigate a judge, right? And in the Maceda versus Ombudsman Vasquez, 22 April 1993, the court in back held that under the doctrine of separation of powers, the ombudsman cannot investigate judges and court personnel. Section 6, Article 8 Constitution provides that it is the Supreme Court which has administrative supervision over all judges and court personnel. So when it comes to now the investigation of judges, obviously the Supreme Court and any member of the judiciary can issue a warrant to conduct those investigations. Certainly, on the matter of protecting judges, it will now be the judiciary marshals. On the matter of going after escaped prisoners or protecting them from right now it's being done by the BJMC, and there have been escapes on the way to court. Here, the judicial marshals now can now be put to bear upon that task. The power to apply for search warrants is essential in pursuit of the investigatory power of the judiciary marshals. I think they cannot adequately, effectively investigate if they would still need to request another body like the PNP to apply for search warrants in behalf of them.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senator Tolentino wants to
President.
join the conversation.
Senator Tolentino, with the
Mr. President.
permission of the two gentlemen on the floor.
With the permission of Senators Gordon and Pimentel, I would like to interject for a few minutes. Mr. President, the former Senate President is correct that perhaps the intention of the bill is really noble given the number of judges slain, but a perusal of the several provisions being mentioned by the gentleman from Cagayan de Oro would show that perhaps it is now too extended, if I may use the term, and with all due respect to the sponsor. And if I recall, Mr. President, in the year 1865, in another jurisdiction, Mr. President, the United States formed the U.S. Security Services, a bureau under the Department of Treasury. And the purpose, Mr. President, is to protect the integrity of the currency of the United States, as well as prevent fraud in the financial system. Through the years, Mr. President, through the years, centuries gone by, the U.S. Security Service is no longer primarily assigned to the Bureau of Treasury. The Bureau of Security, the U.S. Security Services, Mr. President, is now assigned to guard the President of the United States and the various heads of state, and even is now engaged in national security events, Mr. President, and is now the prime intelligence agency of the United States, aside from the FBI, the CIA. My worry, Mr. President, is this. At this very early stage, we are now crafting a very powerful judiciary martial security system, which is now too expanded, too extended, and with all due respect, might probably have to hurdle some constitutional questions as to class legislation. For instance, Mr. President, in the jurisdiction, they have the primary jurisdiction to undertake investigation of crimes and offenses committed against justices, but those alleged violators will not be members of the judiciary, Mr. President. It need not be confined to the members of the judiciary. Am I correct? It's not a judge threatening another judge. It's probably a civilian threatening a member of the judiciary. Am I correct in that supposition, Mr. Sponsor?
I will answer it with a question: who will protect the judge then? The record is very woeful. Judges have not been protected. In fact, there have been suggestions before that judges should carry weapons. In fact, I met a judge in Basilan when I was there. He had an AK-47 in his bench. And, you know, the fact of the matter is, ang dami-daming namamatay. Like I said, 34 since 1999. But in reality, when you look at the history, and you cited history, you're really talking about the Department of Treasury, and they became the Office of the Secret Service. They were assigned to protect the president even early on. But initially, they were there to fight counterfeiting of the American dollar and among other things. And they still do that, but not. But now they're almost exclusively doing that for the president of the United States. But they still are part of the Treasury. If I'm not mistaken,
yes,
it's still under the Department of the Treasury. I'll have to find that right away, if I may. But as far as I know, the Secret Service is still under the Department of the Treasury.
Yes, Mr. President, and
Secret
to allow me to continue, I ask again the permission of the gentleman from Cagayan de Oro.
go ahead.
But in this scenario, Mr. President, it would appear that any action of the judiciary marshal would have a cover of legality and validity because they are considered as a member of the judiciary. So I foresee a complete expansion 20 years from now, even absorbing the NBI and other law enforcement agencies, which at present, Mr. President, is not part of the Constitution. The role of the judiciary is to interpret. But here, the judiciary marshal can perform any other function as instructed by the Chief Justice. And they can even access public records of any government institution upon request made to telecommunication companies, etc., etc., and they can manage and dispose of seized assets. Ang sinasabi ko lang, Mr. President, baka naman nasobrahan kaagad. Yun pong US Secret Service, lumaki yung function through the years, after several centuries. They realized that protecting the president should be a part of their function, and it has evolved into what it is now, the US Secret Service. But here, at the very first instance, before birth, after birth of the judiciary marshal, we will be giving them broad powers to include powers being exercised by other branches, by other law enforcement agencies like the National Bureau of Investigation and even the Philippine National Police. But I have no quarrel with protecting the members of the judiciary. It is just the expansive nature of the enumerated powers which will deal with security threats, finances, national treasury, Data Privacy Act, and even the current practice now, as mentioned by the sponsor, of transferring prisoners. So it's a very expansive and overbroad enumeration of powers now performed by other agencies. Baka naman nabigla po kasi si US Security Service talagang lumaki po yung bata sa tagal ng panahon. Ito, pagsilang, ang dami niya kaagad na trabahong ibinigay. Yun lamang po, Mr. President, and I'd like to thank the good gentleman from Cagayan de Oro for allowing me to interject and interrupt his interpellation. Thank you, Mr. President.
To the statement made by the distinguished gentleman from Cavite. You know, it's really funny when you start looking at the etymology or the history of many of these agencies. The marshals, federal marshals, emanated from the fact that originally they were there to run after runaway slaves. That was before the Civil War. You remember the Dred Scott case? That would be a function of the federal marshal. They'd be utilized to go after runaway slaves that cross borders, the state line. And then they have now gone into chasing after escaped criminals from prison. And by the way, the judiciary is authorized to have this because part of the judiciary is not just to interpret the law, but to administer. We gave them the powers of administration of the whole judiciary, Mr. President. And part of the administration is to see to it that the judiciary is protected. The judiciary is able to do investigations, to be able to, perform their functions. For example, the Supreme Court shall have administrative supervision over all courts and the personnel thereof. And so they're not really part of the judiciary the way we traditionally know about it. They are an arm to protect precisely the judiciary that must remain protected. Otherwise, it will be cowed, intimidated, and will be ineffective. I don't know what the fear is about, and I respect your here, but this is the first time. I don't think they can even fulfill all this with the budget that they're going to get initially of 50 million, and I don't think they can protect all the judges. But we're sending a signal, a strong signal, to all those who would do the judiciary ill, that there will be now not a private army, but people who will protect and who will investigate. For example, isn't it awful that we don't know of any person that has been caught who has assassinated all the 34 cases? For example, I can hardly remember who has been captured. In my staff, somebody works there who's the daughter of Judge Patugulan. And Judge Patugulan was assassinated, an attempt was made on his life when he was in Bagao, Cagayan. And he was, I believe, riding a jeepney, and then an assassination took place. Then he went to Quezon City, where the assassination finally succeeded. Now, that's really sad. When the judge cannot be protected, who will protect the judge? Who will look at the intelligence insofar as assess the threats that could be happening against a particular judge or against any member of the judiciary? For an example, we lost this retired justice of the Court of Appeals, and it took a while before they found him. His fingers had been cut. He was tortured. There is no respect at all for the judiciary. So there's no fear, for that matter, even for the citizenry. So my point is, let's send a strong message that enough is enough. In the old days, when the Commission appointments was there, the Committee on Justice was very powerful. They appointed judges. They recommended judges. Remember, one congressman in the north was able to get away with appointing judges until he himself was finally assassinated. But today, there are so many judges being assassinated. In contradistinction, in the United States, is with respect to the marshals. 4 federal judges were killed. For example, John Wood Jr., an attempt was made against him, and he was slain. Richard Daronco, and all the killers were apprehended. One of them committed suicide. So that sends a very strong message that you don't mess with the federal judge, because the federal marshals will be running after you. So it's important that we send this message. I know that I respect your concerns that we may be creating. We're not going to create a monster, because I don't believe the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court would ever think of itself as his private army.
Mr. President, Senator Tolentino is seeking the floor once
Again.
again, Mr. President.
Right,
Just,
Senator
again,
Tolentino.
a belated interjection. I'm sorry about this. Just one point, Mr. President. So the point here is to allow a co-equal branch of government to form its own security force to protect its members, which is correct, and we all agree with that. So, Mr. President, the Constitution provides shall be only one police force, national in scope, civilian in character. That's the boundary I'm trying to project that this measure might try to cross. And again, I heard a whisper here inside. If you look at the January 6 incident in Washington, D.C., Mr. President, the police force in charge was not the Washington, D.C. police, but the Capitol Police, a police force created to protect the members of the U.S. Congress, because during the old days, there were 2 threats assassinations, attempts against members of the Congress. What would now prevent future Congresses from creating a Philippine Congressional Police charged with a similar function, given the same duties to investigate threats? So we are now creating several police forces when the Constitution provides that there should be only one Philippine National Police. That's my last manifestation, and the good gentleman, with all due respect, would want to respond. So be it, Mr. President. Salamat po.
Out of respect for my good friend, the gentleman from Cavite, I will respond. We do have a security force in the Senate, and we sometimes let them. We sometimes order them to arrest people who are disrespectful of the Senate, who lie to us. We even let them arrest people when they're in a faraway barangay, so that they can be brought to the Senate. Well, there's nothing wrong with the judiciary having that. And insofar as the Capitol Police are concerned, eventually they called in everybody in his uncle. They called in the National Guard. There are 28,000 National Guardsmen guarding the Washington, D.C., Mr. President. And as an aside, I never favored one national police force. And but then we live by what has been decided in the Constitution. But in reality, Clark has its own separate security force. SBMA has its own security force. The Muntinlupa prisoners are supposed to be guards, but they are also supposed to protect the officers there. And yet, you can see that when they're out there, how many Muntinlupa personnel have been killed in less than 2 years? About less than 6 years. About 13 of them were killed, and there's no solution to their cases. We've come to a point where crime is committed with impunity in this country, Mr. President. And we must not let ourselves be defenseless. Pati nga yung ating, well, anyway, I won't go into that because that's really another case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. We join, of course, the effort to enhance the security for the members of the judiciary, which currently is being provided by our law enforcement agencies, primarily by the PNP and maybe sometimes by the NBI. So currently, security for members of the judiciary are expected to come from the PNP. And then currently, crimes against justices and judges fall under the primary jurisdiction of the NBI. So does this measure changes all of this current setup by now transferring all of this to the judiciary marshals. So is this measure, Mr. President, a commentary, a sad commentary on our loss of trust on our PNP to provide the security to members of the judiciary and to the NBI to investigate crimes committed against justices and judges?
Well, let me tell you from my own experience. When my father was assassinated, and every attempt on my father's life, the police were called. And they messed it out the investigation. Then the CIS came in. And then the NBI came in, Mr. President. They never caught the mastermind. Same thing with Judge Patugulan, and same thing with every judiciary here. The police force cannot provide all security for the judges. They have to request a co-equal branch of government, as you say, the PNP, for support. And at times when they get the policeman, they have to pay for the upkeep of the police force who are protecting them. We also know that sometimes the policemen are in the court to put order in the proceedings, to help put order in the proceedings. Then we don't have enough police forces. So why not allow the part of the Supreme Court to have judicial marshals to protect themselves? They're saying enough is enough. We should be able to protect our own. Now, let me just go back to the federal marshals in the states. The federal marshals were created by law under the Judiciary Act of 1789, which also created the Federal Judiciary of the United States. So it started from the Department of Justice, Mr. President. And it still remains there, but they perform functions to protect the judges of the federal government, and at the same time conduct arrests, pursue criminals who jump bail, etc. Why not? Why don't we get the taxpayers' money, money's worth, so that we can go after these folks? However, this doesn't mean that I'm not going to accept, amendments to improve the law or proposals to improve the law. But I'm trying to let the Senate cooperate with the judiciary here in making sure that we are interested in protecting the judiciary, so that there will be support for them, so that they can do their job. I don't think I would be afraid of a judiciary that has marshals that can conduct arrests, Mr. President, and can conduct confiscation. I've asked this question many times. I'm sure the gentleman from Cagayan de Oro, some of our members have heard this. Have you ever heard of the PNP, or for that matter, the dangerous drugs, the PIDEA, being able to confiscate the cars? Most of the time, they confiscate cars, and there's no official document to say that they've confiscated it. And even if they're not supposed to use it, they use it even for crime. Are you asking me about a sad commentary on the state of affairs? Let's call a spade a spade. There are many good policemen, but there are bad policemen. You just saw it last November, when a policeman that should have been kicked out a long time ago, killed in front of his daughter, in front of the family of the people he killed a mother and son. I can also show you a video of how the state of affairs has come here. Barangay Tanod, walang ang sweldo niya allowance lang. Nag-undergo ng quarantine duty. Dinaanan ng motorsiklo. At pagkatapos pinagbabaril. Barangay Tanod dyan na walang, ayoko sabihin walang kakwenta-kwenta, buhay yan Pero volunteer lang yan Tumatanggap lang ng konting allowance sa barangay government yan. Pero there is a sad commentary that's going on in our country. So, if you feel we're safe, I'd like to think we are safe. That's why I'm very supportive of salaries of the policemen, confidential funds, intelligence funds. But, as far as the judiciary is concerned, 34 judges killed is a very large statement.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that, sir. Actually, I join you. I'm not happy with the current situation. The PNP needs to improve a lot. So actually, I've been also calling for a counterpart visiting forces agreement for the police, where our PNP can benefit from. They can benefit from regular visits and exchanges with their counterpart police departments in maybe Scotland Yard.
I think they do that.
On how to solve crimes, etc. So, yes, Mr. Sponsor, would you care to react? But my next question, sir, is I will just speak for myself. I join you, Your Honor, in the effort to provide our judiciary with a specialized force to protect them. My worry is that if we give this agency or body too many tasks, too much responsibilities, then they may not be able to perform that primary role, the thing that we want to achieve, that there is now a specialized body protecting the members of the judiciary. Why do I say that maybe we are giving them too many responsibilities or too many tasks? For example, paragraph D, they will conduct investigations of the members of the judiciary regarding corruption upon instruction of the Supreme Court. I think there's already a body doing that, and that is the Supreme Court itself, as well as the entire office of the Supreme Court, the Department of the Supreme Court. So if maybe I can suggest at the proper time that we revisit such a grant of power, because let us secure the members of the judiciary, but not create another body to also investigate them. Because I think there's already a sufficient system in place to investigate members of the judiciary as far as corruption and irregularities are concerned. Unless the sponsor does not believe that there is such a sufficient system in place.
I really don't believe there is a sufficient system in place. Otherwise, they would not have recommended all these proposals. And I also believe that our colleagues here can make the amendments if they feel that we're giving them a surfeit of power. I'm willing to listen to all of you, and we can all vote on this and reduce the power. I'm not the one who's going to make this law. We're all going to make this law. But in reality, we haven't. You and I went to UP, and it's not something that we can brag about. Why not? When you talk about former President Estrada saying, we'll go after hoodlums in robes. How many hoodlums and robes have gone to jail? Do we know? I don't think so. How many judges have, for example, there were judges, for example, who, I don't want to say that because it's too salacious. A judge lives by himself in a province, and sometimes he brings his wife. He's not even given although I think it's a lot better now, they've gotten better salaries, they should be able to rent. But in the past, the judges were living in the sala with their wife. And sometimes with other extracurricular activities were happening in the premises, Mr. President. So, to my mind, if we want something really well, let's do it well. Kung sumobra, bawasan natin. Kung kulang, dagdagan natin. Pero hindi naman pwedeng bayagan natin na natatakot tayo sa paplanuhin natin. I've often told the people I work with, make fear your friend. I can even cite you from Brother Villanueva, trust in the Lord, and He will lead you to the right path in all your ways. To me, I want to trust my fellow countrymen. I want to trust the policeman. Just today, I got a text, Mr. President, saying, pag dumadaan kayo dito sa kanto ito, matagal na ito, pag may biglang babae nga harap sa inyo, nangyari doon sa anak ko yan, sabi niya, pumara, hindi naman tinamaan. Tapos, nung hindi tinamaan, nagsisisigaw na umihiyaw na tinamaan, and then bigla may dumating ng mga pulis, hindi naman na tinamaan yan eh. Nagkaaway sila. Ginawa ng pulis, kumuha ng batuta at pinalo-palo yung kotse, at yun ang nangyari. I mean, I don't know if this is a fact or fiction, but nonetheless, the very fact that I've seen that text running around so many times, and then saying, in order to escape, naglabas siya ng 3,000 piso, tinapon niya para makatakas siya, hindi na siya hinabol ng pulis, hindi na siya hinabol ng mga tao yan. There are other variations. I am not happy with the peace and order of this country. You all know that. And I always stand up every time. Whether or not this priest was performed something wrong, he was killed. And yesterday, there is a Vatican release, the Vatican Information Bureau saying Catholic Church, a Catholic priest was killed, was murdered in Malay-Balay, in Bukidnon, in the Philippines. I mean, to me, that's very embarrassing. But what is most embarrassing is, may nahuli ba? And that's why we say, I mourn the fact that kung wala tayong expertise, walang madadala. Kaya Kung hindi natin matulungan yan, ayaw mo magkaroon ng judicial marshal para sila ang maghahanap kung sino pumapatay sa kanila. At kung meron mga West na nagluluko, let the Supreme Court Chief Justice sige, imbestigayin mo yan. Para malaman natin kung talaga may kalokohan yung mga yan. No? Ngayon lang, ang lalaki ng dyaryo, tinitira yung justice. I find it disgusting, Mr. President. Can you imagine, tinitira ng Solicitor General yung isang justice? Kasama pa natin na magaling na naging law school dean. Pagkatapos may half-page ad. Saan galing yung pera yan? Na sinasabi, dapat linisin raw yung judiciary. To me, this is the sign of the times. Sad commentary about our society today. Aren't we shocked? Are we just going to accept it? I'm not. But I will listen to you. If you think that we're going overboard, I will listen to you. But I think we have to protect the judge. I have a lady that's in my office, and every time I see her, I see my father in her father na pinatay na walang justice. Hindi nahuli yung mastermind. So, masama ba yun? I think we should really try and fix our country. Otherwise, we will go to vigilantism. Kanya-kanya na. Paano kung yung mga pinatay dito na hindi nagsosolve, gumantihan na lang ng gantihan, edi wala nang tigil. So, I think we should step in and do whatever we can. Of course, I will listen to my friends here in the Senate. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. President, we will join in the effort to provide sufficient and adequate and trustworthy security to the members of the judiciary.
Well, let me just say, if I may, that there are many good policemen. I can remember that case of a judge of a policeman who was in a bus when they were held up, and he was able to get one of them, although hindi na nahuling iba, and he was given a medal for that. I've been researching on riding in tandem, and I saw this policeman. He was about to approach 3 people riding in a motorcycle, and as he approached, they tried to shoot him. And he was able to shoot him, tapos nahulog pa isa sa motorsiklo, hinabol niya. That's a good policeman doing his duty because he was going to accost them, bakit tatlo kayo? The point is, hindi na-enforce yung batas. Hindi natin na po proteksyonan yung dapat proteksyonan. And that is why even the presidents of the United States, a lot of them were assassinated. Before, wala naman Secret Service protection ng presidente ng United States. Lincoln was assassinated. There was no Secret Service protection for Lincoln. And even if there was, John F. Kennedy was shot in a motorcade. So let us cut down. I'm sure you agree with this. I'm not perorating here. I'm just trying to emphasize the fact that we can cut down the avenues upon which judges will be killed, and that we must tell the criminals within the country that they cannot just kill with impunity anymore. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Just for one final point, sir. I have noticed that although this is just initial funding, 50 million pesos, but I think if we are to give life to all of the provisions of the measure under consideration, this 50 million pesos will be a insignificant or not sufficient because, for example, Section 4B will require the putting up of laboratories because of forensic analysis of crimes. Collection of intelligence information would require, maybe you can call it a laboratory of high-tech devices. And then Section 4F hints of the possible witness protection program to be established by the judicial marshals, because it says here to assist in the protection of witnesses. And then there is also Section Q, which mentions a judicial marshal academy. So which I will request to be also Section 4Q to be revisited, because the power to establish a judicial marshal academy, let us give this to the Supreme Court, not to the judicial marshal. So I think the 50 million, although as initial funding, will be woefully short of the real funding requirements of this body that that this measure envisions to create. So we better also look at the implication on the budget. And then I think there's a principle in our constitution that once given to the Supreme Court, we cannot reduce anymore the budget of the Supreme Court. Will this apply to that constitutional rule? Once we approve this body and there's a budget, is this now, does this add to the bottom line of the total budget of the Supreme Court, which should not be decreased from year to year? Mr. President?
The gentleman is finished with his question. First of all, I always want to admit that mali siya, nagsisimula pa lang eh. But let me just point out that a similar situation in Canada. In Canada, Mr. President, the Northwest Mounted Police, renamed the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in 1920, was created in 1873 to police the Western Plains. You know, Canada is like the United States. It has an Atlantic and a Pacific coast. The original 300 officers initially were assigned the task of eliminating incursions by whiskey trading Americans who were inciting Canadian Indians, now known as First Nations, to acts of violence, and later the force spearheaded. You know, the image of that Royal Canadian Mounted Police was that, in spite of the fact that there were so few, they always got their man. And I'm sure I can ask my good friend Senator Lacson, when we talk about the Philippine constabulary, you know, they used to have a motto, always outnumbered but never outfought. I mean, everything starts with a limited number of folks. But with training, with a little bit more support, I think it will happen. I may agree with you that maybe they may not need forensic. They can just share forensics with the NBI. And if you propose amendments, I will listen to it and accept it. But I just want to make sure that we have a good law, that the judges will say, we have a Senate that protects us. We have a Senate that provides us with the wherewithal to be able to have lady justice do its job, na hindi tayo kailangan takot-takutin, hindi tayo matatakot at tinatreaten tayo at yung mga pamilya natin para sa ganoon magkaroon ng tunay na katarungan. Yan lang po ang sinasabi ko dito. Kung meron tayong mga dinagdag, hindi naman po ako nagdagdag dyan eh. Maraming pinasok yung court administrator, yung meron silang mga suggestions, tinatanong rin namin sila. Well, we can slice some of them. But even the academy, if you will, again, kung pilosopohan lang ang labanan, meron tayong academy sa PNPA, meron tayong academy sa Philippine Military Academy, may Coast Guard Academy. Pero I hope na lahat siya nakakatulong, and I'm sure nakakatulong yan.
Yes, sir. So I would like to end my interpellation, sir, about reserving the right during the amendment stage if we overlook some subject matter that we want some clarification on. Can we, with that reservation, with the sponsor, if he's amenable to such a reservation?
Oh, definitely.
During the...
I mean, I'm always liberal with our fellow
yes, sir.
senators, but I'm very conservative when it comes to peace and order.
So thank you, sir. And actually, I join you, Senator Gordon, in the effort to provide adequate security to the members of the judiciary. And I'd like to congratulate you for thinking outside of the box and thinking of this measure to provide the members of the judiciary security through the judicial marshal. So we will, Senator Tolentino and I will help you, sir, in achieving this objective of ours. It's the adequate, trustworthy security to be provided to members of the judiciary. Thank you very much for your patience, sir. Thank you, Mr. Senate President.
The help of Senator
Thank you, Senator Pimentel.
the help of Senator Pimentel, Senator Lacson, and Senator Tolentino are always welcome. Thank you very much.
Majority Leader.
Okay. See Tito Frank next week. Tito Frank. Thank you, Mr. President. I believe we still have interpellators from our colleagues, but they asked Mr. President if they can ask on Monday. That's
All right.
Senator Drilon and Senator Kiko Pangilinan. So with that, Mr. President, all our colleagues to study this further, move to suspend consideration of the same.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have two local bills on our agenda, Mr. President, but the equally important measures.
Sponsorship.
There's someone on the, okay, sorry. I heard a voice from the online session. Mr. President, initially, the Office of Senator Drilon had requested to tackle this next week, but I believe he's agreeable, Mr. President, we can tackle it this week. If it's all right with Senator Drilon, maybe
What
take
is
up
that?
the Kalaka
We
measure.
confirm that, Mr. President, we confirm our agreement with Senator Tolentino that these local bills can be calendared for consideration at this afternoon's session.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. We appreciate the Minority Floor Leader's manifestation. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6598. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are in the period of, I believe, interpellation. We recognize Senator Francis Tolentino, Mr. President. And if any of our colleagues would like to interpellate him on the measure, maybe I could start, Mr. President, if you'll allow me to ask just a few clarificatory questions.
All right, the parliamentary status is that we're still in the period of interpellation. The sponsor is recognized, Senator Francis Tolentino, Chairman of the Committee on Law and Government, and to interpellate the Majority Leader, Senator Zubiri.
Yes, Mr. President, this is friendly interpellation because I'm fully supportive of this measure. Kalaka being a well-deserved future city of the province of Batangas. Mr. President, just to ask some clarificatory questions, the conversion of a town to a city requires a number of requirements under the local government code. May I just ask our proponent or the sponsor if they have complied, for the record, just to place on record, spread into the records, the requirements for income, for example, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President, the income requirement was complied by Kalaka because under existing laws, the local government code as amended by RA 9009, it is required that the average annual income as certified by the Department of Finance should be at least 100 million pesos for the last 2 consecutive years. And Kalaka has Kalaka has exceeded this. Locally generated income, I have the certification here, is 164,961,000 based on 2,000 constant prices certified by the Bureau of Local Government Finance. And if the gentleman would allow me to pursue, even the territory has been complied with. The required territory is 100 square kilometers. The Land Management Bureau certification would show that they have 11,183,936 hectares. So it's more than the required requirement provided for under the existing
What is the
law.
requirement again? Just to refresh the memory.
100 square kilometers, and and they have more than 100 square kilometers, 111, more than 111 square kilometers, Mr. President.
Calaca is not bounded by any sea or
Meron. Meron, sir.
there is.
Sila.
Is it?
I'm familiar with the area, Mr. President. Calaca is bounded by the sea on one side.
Yes, Mr.
That's why they have a lot of, that's why they have a large income, Mr. President, because they have a lot of power plants, coal-fired power plants there. And one of the requirements for a coal-fired power plant is the access to the ocean for the delivery of the coal. So seaside community po yung Calaca, Mr.
So
President.
the 100 square kilometers or more than 100 square kilometers are surely or surely does not include the foreshore land.
Yes, Mr. President. I have a slide presentation, but I'm not so sure if the technical can show that. But
You know,
the
the
majority-
reason I'm asking is because when I was chairman of the Committee on Local Government, there was a municipality in Ilocos Sur before that presented to me that their land area is so and so. But when we checked, they were including the foreshore land. So it can be a city when it's low tide, but a municipality on high tide. But of course, we never allowed it.
Yes, Mr. President,
I know there's also a
if I-
requirement for, yes,
yes, Majority Leader.
Yes,
I'd like to
the
confirm-
gentleman from Batangas is
Yes,
recognized.
being from Batangas, I'd like to confirm the data presented by the chairman of the Committee on Local Government and the statement made also by the Majority Leader that Calaca has surpassed all these requirements for it to become a city. And we in Batangas support Calaca's advocacy to become a city, the fourth city in the province of Batangas. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
All right.
thank you to the governor of, the future governor of Batangas. Mr. President, the population, I believe, they've also complied. Because if if my memory serves me right, it's 100,000 no, minimum population per city.
150,000, Your Honor. Although the population, I believe, has not yet been fully complied, but this is an either or.
Yes, two of the three.
Alternative
Yes.
requirement. Either you have that territory of at least 100 square kilometers or population of at least 150,000,
Yes.
Your Honor.
And the people, Mr. President, of the first district of Batangas, and I know Senator Rector is listening in, the people of the first district of Batangas are very excited because if I'm not mistaken, this will be the first city of the first district, Senator Ralph.
That is correct.
Balayan is not yet a city, no?
That is correct.
Hindi pa
This is the
city,
first.
yung Balayan, no?
Hindi pa.
So it's the first.
Yeah, Calaca will be the first city.
Yeah, first city of the district. Yeah,
the
so
first
quite
district.
exciting times for the people of Calaca. I have no further questions, Mr. President. I just wanted to spread it into the records, so that all our colleagues know that these requirements have been met by this future city.
Mr. President. Mr. President. may I speak
Yes,
regularly?
Senator Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is not to interpolate and ask questions to the distinguished gentleman from Cavite who's sponsoring the measure. This representation is one of the authors, and I would just like to not just clarify, but again point out that during the hearing, which I attended, Mr. President, the Calaca, municipality of Calaca, actually reserve the money that will be spent for the plebiscite. And may I know if this is still the case, to point out that they're actually ready for it, and they are not depending on the national government for the funds to roll out and spend for the upcoming plebiscite. Is that correct, distinguished sponsor?
Yes, I confirm that, Mr. President, that they are ready to finance the exercise to facilitate the conversion of their municipality into a city. And aside from that, Mr. President, the entire community composed of even the private sector are willing to help even in the dissemination of information prior to the plebiscite. If I can mention several private companies now based in Calaca that are really top tier companies. You have South Bay Bulk Terminal, Holcim Philippines, Arvin International, Balayan Distillery, Phoenix Petro Terminal, among others. These are big companies that are really on the verge and are very excited to see the birth of their present location become a full-fledged city, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you very much, distinguished colleague. And having complied with all these requirements, and as you mentioned, they did not just comply, but actually walk the extra mile in ensuring that they are ready for this. I'd like to congratulate our distinguished sponsor. I'm sure the people of Calaca are very excited about this. I'm very good friends with their representative, Representative Eileen Ermita Buhain, and I wish them well. And again, congratulate the distinguished sponsor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority
Thank you, Mr.
Leader.
President. May we recognize the Minority Floor Leader, Senator Franklin Drilon.
Senator Drilon, the Minority Leader is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Will the gentleman sponsor yield to only a few clarificatory questions?
Willingly, Mr. President.
Mr. President, first for the record, we associate ourselves with the desire of the people of Calaca to convert their municipality into a city. We have no problem with that aspiration. I think it is a legitimate aspiration. We just want to check in the spirit of interpellation if the minimum requirements have been met. For the record, and as mentioned earlier, there are basically two conditions. First is that there must have the municipality must have at least 100 billion pesos for the last 2 consecutive years, and either of the following: a contiguous territory of at least 100 square meters as certified by the Land Management Bureau, or a population of not less than 150,000 inhabitants as certified by the National Statistics Office. Mr. President, for purposes of complying with these conditions, may we know for the record what is the population count of the municipality of Calaca per the last survey?
Mr. President, the population count of Calaca, my records would show would be less than 150,000. In fact, it's less than 100,000, Your Honor. But the alternative has been complied with, and I'm referring to the territory. It's more than 100 square kilometers. I have the certification coming from the Land Management Bureau. It's more than 111,000 square kilometers, Your Honor.
Okay, just let's take that one by one. So the population, in fact, my records will show, my records show that the census as of 2015 would indicate that the population count is 81,859. This is as of 2015, and as admitted by the good sponsor, it is lower than the minimum population count requirement of 100,000. So the alternative is the land area. May we know what is the accepted record of the land area of a particular municipality?
The required land area, Your Honor, is 100 square kilometers.
100 square kilometers. And what is the document that will show compliance with the requirement of 100 square kilometers? Is there any particular government issued documents which will indicate the authorized or exact area of the land area of the municipality of Calaca?
Yes, Mr. President. From the Land Management Bureau, their certification would show that the land area of Calaca is 111.84 square kilometers.
111.4.
0.84, Mr. President.
I'm sorry, 111.
111.84. I just rounded off the 3.9 figures, Mr. President. So it's 111.8 square kilometers, more than the requirement of 100 square kilometers, Mr. President.
There is the DBM has its own master list of land area, which I assume is the basis upon which the
ERA.
Is apportioned. May we know if the good gentleman has access to information as to what is the land area of the municipality of Calaca per DBM? This listing by the DBM is used as the basis for computing the internal revenue allotment of Calaca, which land area is needed in order to determine the correct proportion and entitlement of Calaca to the ERA under the local government code. May we know if the good sponsor is in possession of the information from the DBM on the on the area of the municipality of Calaca?
I might not have here in my folder right now, Mr. President. There is a Bureau of Local Government Finance certification. There is a Land Management Bureau certification, which is the requirement under Republic Act 9009, which amended the Local Government Code, and that is what I have in my possession, including the Philippine Statistics Authority, Mr. President. The ERA. The ERA is not part of my records right now, Mr. President.
Yes. As I said, we have no basic objection to this bill, except that we want to make certain that the minimum requirements are complied with, because it may set precedents that can be cited in the future by other local government units seeking to seeking to be converted into a higher classification. So may I request that the good sponsor officially inquire from the DBM on what is the land area of the municipality of Calaca insofar as their listing on the master list of land area is concerned in the DBM, just to remove any doubt.
We will do that, Mr. President, and I think it has been provided us, but it's not just here. But for the record, Mr. President, the requirement for cityhood status, Mr. President, is a certification coming from the Land Management Bureau, and with all due respect, not from the Department of Budget and Management, but I'm more than willing to inquire within the hour, Mr. President, or probably get some of my notes upstairs as to the query of the good minority leader.
Yes, we are not disputing the requirement that it is the Land Management Bureau whose official record may be controlling, if that can be spread into the record. But certainly the records of the DBM is also of relevance, because this is also a record of another government agency. So I don't think that it is improper for us to spread this into the record, to see one might be inaccurate, the other one might be the other record is irrelevant. But we just want to know and establish for the record what exactly is the list, is the data appearing in the Department of Budget and Management, who determines the share in the era based on land area. So that's all that we are asking for, and I'm glad that the good sponsor has
We will do that.
willingness.
We will do that, Mr. President. And if I can ask a minute suspension, Mr. President, I can provide
Very good.
with all respectable haste the land area being required of me, Mr. President.
All right.
Yes, this area as appearing in the records
DBM.
of the Department of Budget and Management. Yes.
All right. As requested, the session is suspended for 1 Senate minute. Session is resumed.
Ayan.
Still on the floor is the sponsor, Senator Francis Tolentino. And he's now ready to give the response to the minority leader. The stats from the DBM. Go ahead,
Yes.
Senator Tolentino.
Yes, Mr. President. Apparently from the DBM, the configuration of Kalaka, as per the records, which they got also from the Land Management Bureau, is that the size of Kalaka, as per DBM records, is 114.58 square kilometers, way above the requirement of the law, which is 100 square kilometers. But for the latest Land Management Bureau records, which I have and which was presented to the committee during the hearings conducted, it is 111.84, Mr. President. So there's a discrepancy of 3 square kilometers, Mr. President. But both figures would comply with the requirements of the local government code. So I'm trying to conceptualize why there is a discrepancy, Mr. President. Perhaps during the earlier days when Kalaka was created during the early 19th century, there were no sufficient geodetic engineering equipment, and the adjoining municipality of Kalaka is Lemery. Kalaka was created 1835, and the adjoining town is Lemery, was created 1858. Lemery was extracted from Taal municipality, and the fringes of these municipalities would be, you can visualize this as ridges similar to Tagaytay. So there is a possibility that measuring equipment then would not be measure exactly the meets and bounds of a ridge area, because you practically have to go to a ravine, Mr. President. So as the query of the good minority leader, the BM records would show 114.58, way beyond the requirements of Republic Act 9009. Land Management Bureau 111.8, way beyond the requirements of the law. So in both aspects, Mr. President, although there is a slight deviation, I think that should not be a boundary dispute, but both can be compliant, Mr. President.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. President, and we do appreciate the effort of the good sponsor to clarify this. Whether or not it's 114.58 per DBM or 111.84 per Land Management Bureau, it complies with the requirement of at least 100 square kilometers. I assume this discrepancy of 3 square kilometers, we leave it to the appropriate executive office to reconcile, as this affects the share, and I don't know how much it would be, the share on the internal revenue allotment. I do not know if somebody else is prejudiced. I do not know from where the 3 square kilometers would be coming from, but let us leave it at that, and I'm glad that for the record it is clarified. We leave to the DBM what the matter of the internal revenue allotment. But while we are on the subject, what is the present internal revenue allotment of Kalaka as a municipality, and how much would it be once it becomes a city, and what is the effect on the provincial era, if any? For the record.
For the record, Mr. President, if we follow existing formulas, Mr. President, the present era formula is 50% population, 25% land area, then the equal sharing among all municipalities would be 25%. So what Calaca would receive as a municipality would be 224 million for this year, Mr. President. But becoming a city would be a short windfall for Calaca because it will definitely increase, Mr. President, because they will just be sharing a pie of 23% amongst all LGUs among the 100 plus cities in the Philippines, as against the 34% being shared by the more than 1,400 municipalities. So definitely there would be a jump, Mr. President, but if the projection of the Mandanas rulings implementation next year, again, it will be bigger, twofold perhaps, but I don't have the computation here, Mr. President, and I think I leave that to some mathematicians present in this chamber to make the appropriate computation, Mr. President.
Thank
But
you.
as to
Thank
the
you.
question as to the province, definitely the contribution insofar as the real estate tax would be not that would be a loss to the province of Batangas, but it will be reciprocated by higher employment, perhaps, insofar as Batangueños are concerned. I mentioned a while ago the presence of significant business establishments, and although I don't want this to happen instantly, higher taxes would mean greater income for the city, the future city of Calaca, and bigger economic opportunities for the residents of Calaca. And if we time it right, this will be the first post-pandemic city in the Philippines.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. All right, just one or two more points. Under Section 12, Paragraph 1, 6 of the proposed measure, one of the powers of the Sangguniang Panglungsod is to set aside 10% of its development fund for the purpose of maintaining and enhancing the ecological balance of the proposed city. My question is, does this run counter to the principle that we cannot dictate as Congress upon the LGU on the manner in which they will allocate the resources? I have no answer to that. I'm asking that as a matter of query and seeking the opinion of the good sponsor whether or not the requirement that 10% of its development fund shall be for the maintenance and enhancement of the ecological balance could run counter to that principle of giving full freedom to the LGU as to how to allocate their own funds. Just raising that for the record, Mr. President. We are not objecting.
Again, Mr. President, I can answer positively because I foresee the law empowering the future city of Calaca in more measures relative to environmental protection, Mr. President. And similar to the Your Honor's Iloilo River, if you look at the landscape of Calaca, we have the famous Bulbok River. And Bulbok River, Mr. President, will traverse a portion of Balayan, and it will go out to the Balayan Bay, Mr. President. Perhaps the authors disseminated from the House, the author of this measure, is forward-looking enough to project measures that would ensure the sustainability of Bulbok River amidst the presence of several industrial companies. They are now projecting into the future means, ways as to how to preserve their environment, even with the presence of Balayan Distillery, Asian Chemical Corporation, High Street, etc., etc. So it's now a convergence of economic opportunities and environmental protection enshrined in that Section 12 mentioned by Your Honor. So they're trying to do that at the same time. Have economic opportunities and have economic environmental protection, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. But I guess the issue that I'm raising is whether or not the mandate to use 10% of its development fund for maintaining and enhancing the ecological balance of the proposed city will interfere with their complete control over their local government resources, which, as ruled by the Supreme Court in a number of cases, cannot be interfered with by the national government, including Congress. I'm asking it as a legal proposition whether or not the allocation of 10% is in violation of this principle. If the good sponsor says it can be sustained, I leave it at that. I just want to spread it into the record. We will have the view of the good sponsor.
If there is a Supreme Court ruling that Congress should not interfere with the financial autonomy of a local government, perhaps, and with all due respect to that Supreme Court ruling, there are also Supreme Court rulings, Mr. President, that mandates, for instance, the Mandamus ruling here in Metro Manila that gives the LGUs the impetus to use their funds for environmental protection. And when you speak of ecological environmental protection, it's not just the environment per se, Mr. President. We now refer to future generations. So I think it's all included, Mr. President. Whether we frame it as purely environmental, economic, environmental tourism, environmental industrial, I think the author of this measure emanating from the House, I see here listed almost 10 congressmen are thinking of ways on how to preserve the pristine condition of Bulbok River and other ecological areas within Calakal, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. The good sponsor may have not come across this, but there is a case entitled Province of Batangas versus Romulo. And let me quote the decision of the Supreme Court. It said, quote, local autonomy includes both administrative and fiscal autonomy. The fairly recent case of Pimentel versus Aguirre is particularly instructive. The court declared therein that local fiscal autonomy includes the power of the LGUs to, inter alia, allocate their resources in accordance with their own priorities. This was a case decided in 2004, and that's why I'm asking for the view of the good sponsor whether the allocation of the 10% could run counter to this decision of the Supreme Court, which interpreted the fiscal autonomy of the LGUs, and that includes the prohibition by national agencies, including Congress, from dictating upon the LGU on the manner of the use of their funds, Mr. President.
I agree, Mr. President, that there might be some hitches here, but if we consider it side by side with the general welfare clause of the local government code, I think it can stand positive scrutiny, Mr. President. And I agree, Mr. President. But unlike perhaps other laws passed by Congress, with all due respect, including that the one cited, if there was indeed a law, there was a law. I think the difference is that this will be approved, ratified by the people of Calaca in an electoral exercise plebiscite called for that purpose. And the affirmation of the people of Calaca will be a go signal that yes, we agree that we allocate a certain portion of the income of the city of Calaca to maintain, preserve our environment here in Calaca, Mr. President. That's my submission, Mr. President. We
Mr. President.
submit this to the will of the people of Calaca.
Mr. President, as I said, we'll bring this out into the record. May I request the good sponsor to before the period of amendments next week to just review this case of Batangas, province of Batangas versus Romulo, citing the case of Pimentel versus Aguirre, and see whether or not the provision that is indicated in the proposed bill would run counter to the principles and to the Supreme Court decision. If I may give the case number, it's GR number 152774, dated May 27, 2004. May I request that we will terminate our interpretation today, but with the request that the good sponsor review this case before the period of amendment and indicate when we consider this issue, this bill again, whether or not the cited case should be considered in the before we vote on second reading on this measure. Is that possible, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President. Over the weekend, Mr. President, I will read the two cited cases side by side, Mr. President, with existing laws that require 20% development fund can be used for socioeconomic and environmental purposes. And for the record, Mr. President, when Congress approved Republic Act 11086, creating the city of Santo Tomas, Batangas, this was the same formula used, Mr. President. So just for the record, but as to the request of the minority leader, within the weekend, I will try to digest the rulings cited by His Honor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We will defer to the final decision of the good sponsor on the applicability of this case, and we leave it at that, Mr. President. Just one final issue. The good sponsor mentioned that this bill, or this, once we pass this bill, it is subject to a plebiscite, which I agree with. However, I have not seen a specific provision on the holding of a plebiscite, and with the agreement of the good sponsor, maybe we can provide the usual period of 120 days from the effectivity of the law for a plebiscite to be conducted, if that is in order.
I agree, Mr. President.
With that, Mr. President, we no longer have any question. We'll just await, as I said, the final opinion of the good sponsor on the issue of the development fund, on the allocation of the development fund. We thank you very much, Mr. President, to the good sponsor for allowing us to raise these questions, which are designed to make the law stronger and consistent with existing legal principles. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Your
Mr.
Honor.
President.
Majority Leader.
Yes, with that, Mr. President, with the understanding that on Monday next week, that he will provide the information requested by Senator Franklin Drilon, we move to close the period of interpellation, Mr. President. Without
Any
prejudice to
objection?
the request. The
Hearing
minority
none,
leader.
period of interpellation is closed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of the measure.
Hearing no objection, consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6222. This is on the committee report number 152, and it's an act reportioning the second legislative district of the province of Rizal into 3 districts. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration is in order.
May we recognize Senator Francis Tolentino for the said measure to sponsor, and our minority floor leader, if he's ready, Mr. President, for
Senator Francis Tolentino, Chairman of the Committee on Law of Governments, recognized the sponsor and to interpellate the Minority Leader, Senator Franklin Drilon.
1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended. Session resumed.
Mr. President, will the gentleman yield the floor to for a minute of manifestation of
President.
questions? Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. President.
yes, Mr. President, before before this matter was put on the floor, the good sponsor made a telephone call to this representation requesting that we expedite the passage, as this is already expected by the people of Rizal, of the second legislative district of Rizal. We have reviewed the bill, Mr. President. We have no basic question. The bill complies with the constitutional requirements. There are no constitutional issues involved, and we therefore have no questions on this period. We have no questions on the period of interpretation, and would endorse the approval of this measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I'd like to thank the minority leader, the same, and the indulgence of a parliamentary interpellation emanating from the good minority leader is indeed an honor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you,
We thank the
Majority
minority. Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We thank the minority floor leader. With that, no other member wishes to interpolate the measure. We move to close the period of interpellation.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Period of interpellation is closed.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments and ask the sponsor if there are amendments to the measure.
Period of amendments open. Sponsor, any amendments?
No amendments, Mr. President.
With that, Mr. President, I move to close the period of individual and committee amendments.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Period of amendments closed.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading House Bill number 6222. I so move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 6222 is approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations to the committee chair. And I move to suspend consideration of the same.
Consideration of the measure suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, we have two other measures, Mr. President, just for sponsorship. And I move that we transfer from the calendar ordinary business to special order Senate Resolution number 620 under Committee Report number 162. I so move.
Any objection? There is none, so transferred.
I move that we consider Senate Resolution number 620 and ask Secretary to read the title of the measure.
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Resolution concurring in the ratification of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons.
Mr. President, may we recognize the distinguished gentleman from Cagayan de Oro, my silingan, my kapitbahay, Mr. President, no other than the chairman of the Committee on Foreign Affairs or Foreign Relations, Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III, to sponsor the measure.
Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III, Chairman of the Committee on Foreign Relations, is recognized. Sponsor the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my esteemed colleagues, magandang hapon pa. Section 8, Article 2 of the 1987 Constitution states that the Philippines, consistent with the national interest, adopts and pursues a policy of freedom from nuclear weapons in its territory. This is the reason why the Committee on Foreign Relations seeks the approval of Senate Resolution number 620 under Committee Report number 162 entitled Resolution Concurring in the Ratification of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Mr. President, nuclear weapons are the most destructive and horrifying weapons ever invented by man. We know this from the effects of the two atomic bombs the Americans dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, both in Japan, during World War II. This regrettable part of world history will have its 76th anniversary on August 6 of this year. Historical accounts reveal that the two explosions killed an estimated 120,000 people, with thousands more later dying from radiation exposure. The extent of the chaos, injuries, and environmental devastation caused by these bombs were till then unimaginable. Recent environmental research using previously unavailable climate modeling techniques indicates that even a limited regional nuclear war could cause global climate cooling capable of cutting food production for many years and would put 1 billion people at risk of starvation worldwide. The research also estimates that a large-scale nuclear war could create ice age-like conditions, which will likely eliminate most of the human race. Whether the explosion is a result of a missile strike during an armed conflict, an act of terrorism, or an accidental detonation, it will have a critical impact on the health and lives of man and mankind. Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, nuclear weapons do not discriminate. We cannot afford another nuclear arms race. The Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings are horrors that should never be repeated. Despite the bleak scenario that the nuclear weapons could bring to the world, it is comforting to know that the United Nations has spearheaded several multilateral agreements to address the dangers of weapons of mass destruction, to which the Philippines has been a party. Like the following. Number 1, treaty banning nuclear weapon tests in the atmosphere, in outer space, and underwater, which was signed on August 5, 1963, and ratified by the Philippines on October 11, 1965. Another one is the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, signed in Washington, D.C. on July 1, 1968, ratified by the Philippines on June 28, 1972. Third one is Convention on the Prohibition of the Development, Production, and Stockpiling of Bacteriological, Biological, and Toxin Weapon and on their destruction, which was signed in London on April 10, 1972, and ratified by the Philippines on March 10, 1973. Fourth is the Convention on the Prohibition of the Development, Production, Stockpiling, and Use of Chemical Weapons and on their destruction, which was signed in Paris and ratified by the Philippines on February 25, 1995. Number 5, International Convention for the Suppression of Acts of Nuclear Terrorism, which was signed in New York on April 13, 2005, and took effect in the Philippines on July 7, 2007. And number 6, Safeguards Agreement with the International Atomic Energy Agency through the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Weapons signed on February 21, 1973, and which entered into force on October 16, 1974, and the additional protocol thereto signed on September 30, 1997, which entered into force on February 26, 2010. Mr. President, we have before us today for the Senate's concurrence the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which is a legally binding instrument to prohibit nuclear weapons, leading to their total elimination. This was signed by the Philippines on September 20, 2017. The instrument of ratification was sent by the Office of the President to the Senate on November 18, 2020. This is the first globally applicable multilateral agreement to comprehensively prohibit nuclear weapons on the basis of international humanitarian law, and the Philippines is among the first states to sign it. And last January 22, 2021, the treaty just entered into force with a total of 52 state parties ratifying the instrument. In 2016, the UN General Assembly decided by an overwhelming majority to initiate negotiations on a treaty banning nuclear weapons. In 2017, the UN conference was then held to negotiate a legally binding instrument to eliminate nuclear weapons. As a result thereof, a total of 122 countries, including the Philippines, voted in favor of the final text of the treaty. The Philippines, through then Secretary of Foreign Affairs Alan Peter Cayetano, signed the treaty when it was opened for signature on September 20, 2017 at the United Nations in New York during the sidelines of the 72nd session of the United Nations General Assembly. Article 1 of the treaty provides that each state party undertakes to never, under any circumstance, 1. Develop, test, produce, manufacture, otherwise acquire, possess, or stockpile nuclear weapons or other nuclear explosive devices. 2. Transfer to any recipient whatsoever nuclear weapons or other nuclear explosive devices or control over such weapons or explosive devices directly or indirectly. 3. Receive the transfer of or control over nuclear weapons or other nuclear explosive devices directly or indirectly. Number 4, use or threaten to use nuclear weapons or other nuclear explosive devices. Number 5, assist, encourage, or induce in any way anyone to engage in any activity prohibited to a state party under this treaty. Number 6, seek or receive any assistance in any way from anyone to engage in any activity prohibited under this treaty. And number 7, allow any stationing, installation, or deployment of any nuclear weapons or other nuclear explosive devices in its territory or at any place under its jurisdiction or control. Mr. President, in ratifying the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the Philippines joins the international community in urging member states of the Non-Proliferation Treaty to pursue effective and concrete measures on disarmament. The treaty further reinforces commitments against the use, threat of use, development, production, manufacture, acquisition, possession, stockpiling, transfer, stationing, or installation of nuclear weapons. Although not binding on the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, the treaty, the TPNW, still contributes to the development of customary international law on the issue, and it strengthens the legal and political norms against the use of nuclear weapons. This mechanism can be likened to the effects of herd immunity, a term which we now know and understand, that if enough states are resistant to nuclear weapon use, its abuse and disuse have no more place to go. And while not every single state is immune to nuclear use, the community of nations as a whole has protection. The more states support the treaty, the more it will be a norm. In the long run, such consensus can greatly influence the behavior of the 5 nuclear states. Countries which could potentially be affected by nuclear weapons use and testing have much to gain from the TPNW's provisions on victim assistance and environmental remediation. These benefits do not depend on nuclear weapon states' ratification of the treaty. Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, in closing, let me share what our President said when he delivered his speech at the 75th UN General Assembly last September 23, 2020. But no aspiration nor ambition can justify the use of weapons that destroy indiscriminately and completely. There is no excuse for deaths that a nuclear war could cause, nor the reckless use of chemical and biological weapons that can cause mass destruction. Let us protect our citizens the best way we can, Mr. President and my dear colleagues. It is for these reasons that the Committee on Foreign Relations respectfully urges the Senate to concur in the ratification of this treaty. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo at mga kasama.
Thank you, Senator Pimentel.
Mr. President,
May we recognize Senator Rizzo Ontiveros, Mr. President?
Senator Ontiveros is recognized.
No, we need that.
thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, dear colleagues, it's my honor to co-sponsor Committee Report 162, or the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, TPNW. Friends and comrades know that I trace the early awakenings of my activism to the cause of nuclear disarmament. In my second year in high school at St. Scholastica's College, Manila, Mommy brought me to a symposium of the Nuclear Free Philippines Coalition, which changed my life. I formed an organization called the Nuclear Disarmament Group in St. Sco, at mula po doon ay tuloy-tuloy na, Mr. President. I understand that the TPNW is globally polarizing. The 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, incidentally also the 5 nuclear weapon states recognized by the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, namely the United States, the United Kingdom, Russia, France, and China, are united in their opposition to the treaty. Many have also questioned the efficacy and legitimacy of the TPNW, considering its non-acceptance by the nuclear-armed states and possible tensions with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. To my mind, however, the question of nuclear weapons is an existential one. To quote the ICAN, or International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, these weapons have humanitarian and environmental consequences that span decades and cross generations. In fact, the nuclear bomb has been called the greatest moral problem of all time and the most destructive, inhumane instrument of war ever created. Even without the support of the nuclear powers, the TPNW is groundbreaking and a step in the direction of creating an international norm of conduct. With 86 nations signing it and 52 so far ratifying it, perhaps, Mr. President, we will be the 53rd, the collective voice of humanity is clear. Nuclear weapons should be banned forever, as we have banned landmines and biological and chemical weapons. I would like to end, Mr. President, with a quote from Pope Francis on the 75th anniversary of the Hiroshima bombing in August 2020. Quote, quote, "It has never been clearer that for peace to flourish, all people need to lay down the weapons of war, and especially the most powerful and destructive of weapons, nuclear arms that can cripple and destroy whole cities, whole countries." Close quote. Marami pong salamat, Mr. President. Salamat po kay Chairman Pimentel. Maraming salamat po mga kasama.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we suspend, we may have to suspend consideration of this measure, Mr. President, because we need two-thirds vote. We need the number 16, is the magic number. So we'll take it up first thing Monday, as soon as we do the roll call. But I'd like to associate myself with the statements made by my distinguished colleagues, Senator Coco Pimentel and Senator Risa Ontiveros, that a nuclear war is unthinkable, Mr. President. If there will be a nuclear war, I think that would be the end of the world. They say World War III will be fought with nuclear weapons, and World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones, because there will be nothing left in this world of ours. So, Mr. President, I support this measure wholeheartedly. And Senator Dillon would like to also be recognized, Mr. President. I'm a distinguished minority floor leader.
Minority Leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman sponsor yield the floor? Just a few clarificatory questions.
Yes, Minority Leader.
Thank you very much. Following the lead of my boss, the majority leader, I will cast an affirmative vote in the concurrence of the Senate in this treaty. But for the record, how many countries would have to ratify this treaty before it comes into full force and effect?
50, sir. 50, 50, which has been achieved.
How many?
50, 50.
50. And 50 or so, at least 50 member states have ratified this agreement.
As of date today, 52. So lampas na po. 52 na po ngayon, 52.
52.
Yes, sir.
And we could become the 53rd.
Yes, sir, hopefully.
Yeah. I don't think there is any, I think we can get the number. But having said that, which countries would have in their arsenal nuclear weapons? For the record.
Can we have it again, sir? The question, which countries?
Which countries would have nuclear weapons in their
Yes,
arsenal?
sir. The 5 permanent members of the United Nations, United States, United Kingdom, Russia, China, and France.
This treaty, even as it has already come to force, is not binding on these 5 permanent members. Is that how we
Yes,
understand?
sir. Yes, sir, because they are not even signatories to the treaty.
They are not signatories to the treaty. It is not
Yes,
binding on them, and yet they are the ones in possession of nuclear weapons.
Yes, sir. That's why.
Ano ang bisa nitong treaty na ito?
That's why.
The countries who have concurred and ratified in the treaty because, as a matter of policy, it is the correct rule that should be followed, and yet they do not have, I do not know how many of the 52 would have weapons of mass destruction or of nuclear weapons. But what is clear from the answer is that the 5 permanent members who have nuclear weapons are not bound by this treaty.
Yes, sir. That's why.
So only
I borrowed the concept of herd immunity to show that these five nuclear-powered states are now surrounded by countries which are signatories to this treaty, calling for the prohibition of nuclear weapons, and we strengthen such a call because the treaty is now in effect, and if more states join the treaty, and then there are the obligations, sir, in Article 1, which I read in my speech. For example, the five nuclear-powered states cannot ask a state party to the treaty to use its territory or any area under its jurisdiction for the transit of nuclear weapons, or for the even a temporary storage or then temporary travel of nuclear weapons and other nuclear explosive devices over the territory of a signatory state. So, in effect, sir, dahan-dahan nating pinapakita na we are not cooperating with any activity related to nuclear weapons or nuclear explosive devices.
Mr. President, even without our ratifying this treaty, our Constitution prohibits us from the use of nuclear weapons or the storage of nuclear weapons inside our territory.
That's correct, sir.
Yeah.
That's correct. But then there are some benefits because this treaty now establishes a network where the state parties are obligated to help each other in case we become victims or we are affected by a nuclear explosion. Ang tawag victim assistance, and then this environmental remediation, sir. So it's actually a network of like-minded states. We express our position on nuclear weapons, and we are stating that we want to be obliged to help each other.
Yes, Mr. President, as I said from the start of this interpellation, we will vote for the ratification of this treaty because it is provided for in our Constitution. That is a constitutional principle which we must adhere to, whether or not this treaty is ratified by the Philippines, by our country. But I just ask those questions to spread into the record, the incongruous situation, world situation, wherein those countries which are in fact in possession of nuclear weapons are not bound by this treaty and can continue with their own national policies, which does not exclude use of nuclear weapons, because they feel they are of the view that it is to their national interest that they should not join this, they should not ratify this convention or treaty. So with that, Mr. President, as I said, we will cast an affirmative vote with the note of disappointment over the obvious lack of support by the developed countries, particularly the five permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, who should be bound by this treaty for the sake of world stability and peace, but in fact has chosen not, or by express, is not bound by the terms of this treaty. So with that, Mr. President, let me put on the record my commendation to the good sponsor for recommending the ratification of this treaty from where I sit, and the ratification must be done by the Philippine Senate, because that is the duty, this is the consistent with the obligation imposed upon the Philippines by its own constitution, ratified by the Filipino people. With that, Mr. President, we thank the good sponsor for giving us time, the floor, to raise these issues and spread it into the record. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, please we recognize Senator Joel Villanueva, after which Senator Richard Gordon.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is just a short manifestation. A while ago, this representation who also signed the committee report asked the sponsor if I can co-sponsor the measure, and I was told that it will be tackled on Monday, and so I did not prepare the sponsorship speech. But if I may be allowed, Mr. President, to move to just insert into the records my sponsorship speech, if that is okay, with the
Yes, sir.
permission of the body. Thank you.
Yes, I will place it on record.
May we recognize Senator Richard Gordon, Mr. President?
Senator Richard Gordon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. About a few years ago, when I came from Nagasaki, to be precise, May 17, 2017, I authored a resolution, I sponsored it actually, expressing the full support of the Senate of the Philippines to the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement in prohibiting and eliminating nuclear weapons at the global level. As Senator Drilon adequately pointed out, our Constitution under Section 8 of Article 2 has declared that the Philippines, consistent with the national interest, adopts and pursues a policy of freedom from nuclear weapons in its territory. And certainly, as a humanitarian organization and a member of it and the president of the local chapter, local society here, I have to remain consistent. And so I will immediately say that I am in full support. I signed it, and I would even want to sponsor it because it is important for the world. But this is not in the march of real politics, Mr. President. The world has marched many times to the tune of disarmament or even limitation. The naval treaty in the 1900s, in the 1930s, between Japan, America, and Great Britain, toned down the amount of tonnage and guns that navies of the world at that time can possess. But as you can see, it led to war eventually. All these dreadnoughts were used, bombed, in fact, in World War II in Pearl Harbor, and certainly many people died on board the Arizona. So in effect, while we ratify and while we now endorse the Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, we cannot keep our eyes closed on the fact that there are ships, aircraft from different nations who pass through the South China Sea or through our oceans, nuclear submarines that traverse our oceans, and they're here within our waters at times. We may not know it. And that's precisely why I think that it's important that we support the prohibition of nuclear weapons, but at the same time make sure that we have the capacity to detect them when they're here. Certainly, when a Chinese vessel comes in, I'm sure they're asked if they have nuclear weapons, and if they say, like the United States, that we neither confirm nor deny, that is already acceptable to our government. So in reality, the real politic of the world is that these things exist. But this is really one way of airing our position as an independent country that, and as a humanitarian country, that we support this resolution. The treaty, rather, the ratification of the treaty. And so, Mr. President, with that, I would like to express my desire to be co-sponsor with the previous remarks that I've made as a part of the sponsorship. And if the gentleman from Cagayan de Oro would submit, I would be obliged to him, because I would be fulfilling my duty as chairman of the Philippine Red Cross and the International Red Cross, a board member that for 8 years, I would be fulfilling my duty and my advocacy and our organization's advocacy to try and ban nuclear weapons and prohibit nuclear weapons in the world. On that note, thank you very much, Mr. President, for allowing me to make this manifestation.
Thank you, Senator Gordon. Your co-sponsorship is most welcome. Let me share with you, earlier this afternoon, I wanted to use a video during my sponsorship speech, and I decided to use it, but it was really actually a video of the International Committee of the Red Cross supporting the treaty, supporting the call for banning the use of nuclear weapons. And I just got an update from the DFA on this TPNW, and it's quoting Mr. Peter Maurer,
Now,
President Maurer, yes, President of the International Committee of the Red Cross, who also thanked the states, civil society, and individuals that have paved the way for the entry into force of the treaty. And he shared that there were still 13,000 nuclear weapons in the world, several thousands of which are on high alert and ready to be launched at any moment. So that's the one of the statements coming from the International Committee of the Red Cross, whose support is really all out and well known for this call to ban nuclear weapons. So thank you, Senator Gordon.
I thank the gentleman, Mr. President, for citing Mr. Maurer, who is a respected president of the International Committee of the Red Cross. In fact, my commitment at that time when I went to Nagasaki was that I was pretty sure that the Senate, because of our constitutional provision, would support the prohibition of nuclear weapons. And I'm happy that we are now endorsing the treaty and ratifying the treaty, Mr. President. So I congratulate my good friend Toto Coco Pimentel for as chairman of the Committee on Foreign Relations for having successfully steered this proposition, which is important to the world, and also Lisa Antiveros for her co-sponsorship and co-authorship, and all of us here. It shows that there's still some humanity left in some of the parliaments of the world, like the Philippine Senate. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Senator
President.
Gordon. Yes, Majority
Thank you,
Leader.
Mr. President. Yes, we, as much as we want to tackle this today, I just want to make sure that we have everyone is on board when we vote on this. I'm sure it will be a unanimous vote on Monday, Mr. President. So with that, I move to suspend. Mr. President, we recognize Senator Recto and then
Yes.
Senator Marcos.
Yes.
Before we suspend.
Senate President Pro Tempore Ralph Recto is recognized.
Thank you, Senate President. Thank you, Majority Leader. May I also be made a co-sponsor of the measure with the permission of our sponsor.
Most
Duly
welcome,
noted.
Mr. President. Senator
Thank you.
Recto is most welcome to be a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you
Yes,
very much.
Senator.
Thank
And
you.
then Senator Marcos would like to be
Senator
recognized.
Marcos, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I would like to manifest my support for the same treaty and the efforts of my good chairman in the Committee of Foreign Affairs, despite the patent absurdity of a treaty excluding the N5 or the big five nuclear states as signatories, reducing it to a gratuitous condemnation of nuclear war. Nevertheless, this is all we have at the moment, and let us support it. Thank you.
May
Thank you.
recognize, thank you, Mr. President, to Senator Marcos. May recognize Senator Villar, Mr. President.
Senator Cynthia Villar is recognized.
Yeah. I just want to move that we all be made co-sponsor and co-author of this bill. This is a very good bill for the Philippines and all of us. Thank you.
Yes. Mr.
Thank you for
President,
that.
with the
Senator
permission
Villar,
of
thank you
the
for that.
sponsor.
I second the motion of Senator Villar, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, I was going to ask if everyone would like to be made co-sponsor. So, with the permission of the sponsor, thank you very much. We would like to be associated with this measure. And the good
Be
sponsor,
present on Monday.
yes, and the good sponsor, Mr. President, is absolutely correct, because if we imagine if we can get 100 states, 100
Countries.
states, meaning 100 countries together against the proliferation of nuclear weapons, that will be a show of force, Mr. President. And so we'll be excited to be number 53 by Monday. So, Mr. President, with that, I move to close the period of interpellation and sponsorship. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the motion of the Majority Leader is carried.
I have to do second reading Monday. Mr. President, with that, I move to approve the measure on second reading. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Chair hears none. The motion of the majority leader is carried.
And on Monday, clarification, Mr. President, to our colleagues, on Monday, we will be doing the third reading vote,
Yes.
which needs the 2/3 number. Hopefully, we'll be able to get a unanimous vote on Monday. So,
Thank you.
thank you very much, and move to suspend consideration of the measure.
Is there an objection? Chair hears none. The motion is carried.
Thank you, Mr. President. And last on our list is just the sponsorship of a very important measure, Mr. President. I move that we transfer from the calendar, my apologies, may we ask for, I move for a additional reference to business.
Additional reference of business. Any objection? Chair hears none. Motion is carried.
Second additional reference of business, bill on first reading, Senate number 2026, an act reapportioning the province of Benguet into 2 legislative districts, introduced by Senator Marcos.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Committee report number 166, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Government Corporations and Public Enterprises and Labor, Employment and Human Resources Development on Senate number 2027, with Senators Villanueva, Gatchalian, Marcos, Gordon, and Revilla Jr. as authors thereof, entitled an act granting the President of the Philippines the power to defer the increases in contributions of the Social Security system for a limited period of 6 months, which may be extended to another 6 months in times of declared national emergency or state of calamity, amending Section 4A9 of Republic Act number 11199, also known as the Social Security Act of 2018, and for other purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate numbers 1965, 1970, and 1996. Sponsor, Senator Gordon.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order, Senate Bill number 2027, under Committee Report number 166. I so move.
Is there any objection? Chair hears none. The motion of the Majority Leader is carried.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2027.
Is there any objection? Chair hears none. The motion is carried.
May we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
Secretary is directed to read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill number 2027, an act granting the President of the Philippines the power to defer the increases in contributions of the Social Security system for a limited period of 6 months, which may be extended to another 6 months in times of declared national emergency or state of calamity, amending Section 4A9 of Republic Act number 11199, also known as the Social Security Act of 2018, and for other purposes.
Mr. President, may we recognize the distinguished gentleman from Zambales, no other than the sponsor of the measure, Senator Richard J. Gordon.
The energetic and hardworking chair of the committee, Senator Richard Gordon, is recognized.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Mr. President and friends. Good evening. I just want to sponsor this bill tonight because I think it's important that we do this, because we are in the middle of a pandemic and a lot of people have lost their jobs, cannot contribute, and those who can contribute certainly are even burdened by a possible increase if it is going to show effect to become effective. So the title, Mr. President, as already read, grants the President of the Philippines the power to defer the increases in contributions of the Social Security system for a limited period of 6 months, which may be extended to another 6 months in times of a declared national emergency or state of calamity, amending Section 4A9 of Republic Act number 11199, also known as the Social Security Act of 2018. As already stated, Senator Gatchalian and Senator Revilla have filed similar measures. I filed, Revilla and Villanueva filed the measure, as well as yours truly. Having said that, Mr. President, the first consideration here is to try and protect the people from this very, very dire situation, a pandemic, and try to alleviate the suffering if need be. But if we just go ahead as a Congress, declare that we can defer the declaration, the increases as scheduled, and as you all know, we passed this law in 2018. And actually, this is the first time we will be increasing it from 12% to 13%, Mr. President. As you all know, there is hardship right now, even for those who have jobs and even for the employers. But certainly a lot of the 99% of our business comes from the small, medium-sized business. They're also having a hard time coping, Mr. President. And so it is imperative that we pass this. We're not going to make any judgment. We will let the President of the Philippines do the declaration of deferment of any increases. We had a hearing here, SSS agrees, and I thought that we would have more flexibility if the President does this, because this is not a one-time event that we are going to have a major pandemic or a major disaster, so that the law will be given flexibility. We would allow the President of the Philippines to make the decision with the after consultation with the SSS, as well as those people who are stakeholders in the SSS. We do not want to bring down the SSS because when RA 119 was passed, it was passed to address the problem of the shortening of fund life of the SSS by 10 years from 2042 to 2032 on account of the approved 1,000 peso additional benefit given by President Duterte effective January 2017, as stated in the memorandum from the Executive Secretary dated February 22, 2017. And so, as I pointed out, we were not able to anticipate the pandemic. So from 2019 until today, there had only been one increase in contribution from 11% to 12%, I correct myself, contribution rate, and from 15,000 peso maximum monthly salary credit to 20,000 maximum monthly salary credit. Second round of increase is scheduled in 2021 from 12% to 13% contribution rate, and from 20,000 maximum monthly salary credit to 25,000 peso monthly maximum monthly salary credit. So, Mr. President, global pandemic caused by COVID-19 struck the Philippines in January 2019. The impact of COVID-19 on businesses and working public is very drastic and big. According to the NEDA, there has been 5.2 trillion lost sales in the first semester alone, which is higher than the 2021 budget of 4.5 trillion. And as of August 2020, the Philippines have its first recession in 29 years, with a grim outlook for economic recovery as COVID-19 continues to wreak havoc to the economy. Between August and September 2020, around 6%, or around 90,000 of the 1.4 million micro, small, and medium enterprises remained closed half a year after the country imposed a lockdown in the capital region and several provinces to prevent the spread of COVID. Unemployment rate as of October 20 is about 8.7%, or 3.81 million unemployed Filipinos. Underemployment as of October 20 is 14.44%, or 5.7 million underemployed Filipinos. 420,000 Filipinos lost their jobs during the COVID-19 crisis, while another 4.5 million were affected by flexible work arrangements and temporary business closures. This is according to DOLE, the Department of Labor and Employment. Ultimately, surviving this crisis is a must for us to evolve. With many businesses closing and employees losing their jobs, this committee looks into giving our people financial breathing space to be able to adjust to the ongoing national emergency. Thus, while taking into consideration of the financial viability of the social security system. With that, Mr. President, I hope that the Senate will pass this so that this measure can be done post-haste in case the President should so decide to make the adjustments that are needed. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gordon.
Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Senator Bong Revilla, for the record, requested his co-sponsorship speech be inserted to the records on Senate Bill number 2027.
We take note of that.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next to sponsor the measure is the distinguished gentleman from Bulacan, Senator Joel Villanueva. I'll ask for a minute suspension so we can change place.
Thank you. 1 minute suspension, Majority Leader. Thank you.
Ulit. Okay. Ready to resume. Session resume.
Thank you, Mr. President. I be recognized.
Yes, the distinguished gentleman from the great province of Bulacan is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. It is my honor to co-sponsor Senate Bill number 2027 under Committee Report number 166, introduced by the Senate Committee on Government, Corporation, and Public Enterprises, chaired by no less than our very, very hardworking colleague, Senator Richard Dick Gordon, and Senate Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resource Development, chaired by this representation. We'd like to also thank the good chairman for considering our bill, Senate Bill number 1965, authored by this representation, and Senator Amy Marcos and Senator Win Gatchalian. Mr. President, please allow me to take a few minutes to raise at least 3 points why we are pushing this bill that seeks to grant the President of the Philippines the power and authority to suspend or defer the implementation of the mandated increase in SSS contribution. First, there's no debate that membership contribution is the lifeblood of a pension. It is the lifeblood of a pension fund. But when there's little to draw from an economy bleeding jobs, from businesses hemorrhaging, from lack of sales, from workers who have to work shorter hours for less, then government must extend to those who pay this payroll tax the same relief it had extended to those with house rents and bank loans. Impose a moratorium. What are we proposing, Mr. President, is not a forgiveness but a freeze for the time being and not forever. And it will not cover the entire monthly contribution, but only the increase that is supposed to take effect this year. Let me stress, Mr. President, that this is not a payment holiday, but a pause, not for the entire dues, but only a portion to be lifted when the pandemic has retreated and when normalcy has returned to our lives. Second, some say that this bill is driven by the desire to be populist. No, Mr. President. Absolutely not. This is motivated by our obligation to help. Facts and figures are also on our side. As stated a while ago by the good chair, Senator Gordon, it's the government's count. By the government's count, 3.8 million of our kababayans lost their jobs in October 2020. But if the SWS is to be gauged, the unemployed numbered 27.3 million as of September 2020. Our GDP also contracted by 11.5% in the third quarter of 2020, the fastest shrinking in the region. But we're racing to the front in piling up COVID cases, and God knows where we are in the vaccine race. This plunge only mirrors the number of companies, Mr. President, who have found themselves in the hole. According to DOLE, there are about 2,167 companies that have been forced to shut down permanently, while 100,290 closed temporarily as a matter of survival, leaving their workers who have families to feed with nothing to survive on. Tapos, kokolektahin pa ho natin, Mr. President, kokolektahan pa ho natin sila ng dagdag na SSS contribution. Third and lastly, Mr. President, we are by nature an optimist who even in the darkest of days view the future through the prism of hope. But believe me, I rid myself of this bias in studying the SSS books, Mr. President, impassionately. And what I see is that our proposal is not a prescription for bankruptcy, as we are made to believe by a few people. This temporary halt in SSS premium hike, in the name of compassion, will not sink the SSS. It will remain financially buoyant. Yes, there will be a momentary dip in income, but it is not and never be an irreversible disaster. Let me briefly explain, Mr. President. Sa presentation po kahapon ng SSS During the hearing, ang nakita po natin ay mga numero sa mga charts and tables, cold numbers. Pero sa likod po ng mga numerong yan ay mga buhay na tao o warm bodies. Halimbawa po, ang manggagawa na si Elena Parena na isang massage therapist sa Maynila ay napilitan na pong mag-temporary leave dahil sa mga quarantine restrictions last year. Dahil wala pong trabaho, nauwi sa pamamasura o pangungulekta ng mga tira-tirang pagkain sa kalapit nilang palengke para lamang may makain ang kanyang mga mag-anak. Mr. President, according to SSS estimates, the proposed SSS contribution rate increase this year, 2021, is an estimated 15 to 100 pesos per covered employee. This amount may not seem much, however, our minimum wage workers and workers who earn lower than the minimum wage, the amount is more than enough to purchase an additional meal for their families. Ang problema, Ginoong Pangulo, Mr. Chairman, ang kadalasang ehemplong ibinibigay ng SSS sa atin ay yung kumikita ng 10,000 a month. Kasi nga naman po, maliit sahod, maliit din ang dagdag na premium. Pero kung titingnan po natin, Ginoong Pangulo, ay yung kumikita ng 30,000 pesos kada buwan, ang bayarin po nila ay nasa 3,280 pesos. Yung 2,155 po ay pasan ng employer at yung 1,125 sagot naman ng manggagawa. Pati kasambahay po, Ginoong Pangulo, tatamaan ang kakarampot nilang kita na 5,000 pesos kung sila po ay nandito sa NCR. Dahil 600 pesos po kaagad ang kaltas nila. 435 pesos ang sagot ng employer at 225 pesos naman ang sagot ng kasambahay. Mr. President, temporarily suspending or deferring the SSS contribution rate increase this year will ease the burden of our workers and businesses until they can get back to their feet. One way to do this is by granting the President the power and authority to suspend or defer the implementation of the mandated increase in SSS contribution rates in times of emergency or calamity for a minimum period of 6 months. Of course, the President may extend the suspension if it is necessary to protect public interest and welfare. Ulitin ko po at sa aking pagtatapos, hindi po ito forever, Ginoong Pangulo. Pansamantala lang po. Ang minimum ay 6 na buwan o hanggang makabangong pumuli ang ating mga negosyante at mga manggagawa. Sana po at umaasa po ang representasyon na ito na maipapasa na po natin ito sa lalong madaling panahon. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, and may God bless us all.
Thank you, Senator Joel. Session is suspended for half a minute. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of Senator Gordon and Senator yourself, Mr. President, presiding officer, may be made a co-author of this measure. Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Thank you
Yes,
very
Mr.
much,
President.
Mr. President. With that, we move to suspend, to allow our colleagues to study the measure further. We move to suspend consideration of the measure for next week, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Chair hears none. The motion of the majority leaders carried.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a very long day and very productive day today, and I thank my dear colleagues for their patience. I move that we adjourn session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday, February 1, 2021, in the month of Valentine's.
February. Is there any objection? There being none, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, February 1, 2021.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.